Okay, so now we got started. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Um, what I wanted to talk to you about, specifically was when you did get to Washington, because the last video says chants have never worked. You've tried chanting, and chants don't work, and then you went to go see Gene, and things changed. So, um, what I want to ask you about is when you did go and see Jean, and she started laying it on you about the chanting. Can you tell me about that situation?
Well, it's a long time ago, and in those days, the thing was they would tell people if you chant, you will get benefits. You will have things happen to you in good and surprising and sometimes even miraculous ways. And I didn't really believe her, and but I did start to chant, and some good things happened. Nothing particularly great.
Good things like what?
Well, this is back when I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
So I chanted for weed and I got a bag full of weed.
Woo.
I chanted to get laid and I got laid. And that had never happened, even though I was already,
So there
I
was
would have
something
been
to
20.
it.
What?
So there was something to it.
Well, yeah, but then again, it was nothing particularly miraculous. I think what happened to me the most was that I met this man who was uh, a colonel in the Air Force who had helped evacuate Israelis during the Six-Day War. And he was a really confident and smart and very articulate guy. And he was the leader of the Buddhist organization. So I went to a meeting with him. It was on a Friday night. And he talked a lot, and I was really impressed with him just as a person. And I remember at the end, I asked him, well, okay, so if this chanting is supposed to do all this, why does it work? And he just looked at me straight and said, I have no idea. I don't know. You know. And I thought that was really honest, that he didn't try and make something up. But because I liked him a lot and because I found him to be really authentic and really honest, I decided I would try the chanting. And then those two things I mentioned are what happened. But most of all, it was this feeling for me of family. Jean was like a sister to me, and this guy actually told me he felt like I was his son, and that meant a lot to me because I had never had a family. I didn't have a mother, I didn't have a father. I mean, I had them, but neither one of them ever acted like a father or a mother.
Was Jean more like a sister to you before the chanting?
Yeah, no, we used to call each other brother and sister.
Okay.
We were really close. And so it was more the family notion and the feeling of purpose that I had that kept me chanting and made me become more and more involved with that organization. So that's why I started chanting. And then I kept chanting both because I enjoy chanting. I enjoy the practice, the meditation aspect of it. And I enjoy chanting because I feel like you give voice not only to what you're thinking. Meditation for most people is like they just sit there and think, or they try and empty their mind. And I like chanting because you
You're
use your
actually
voice and you put it out there in the universe. And there even becomes a focal point for the chanting, which is the object. They call it the object of worship, but you're not really worshiping it. To me, it's a portal. To me, it's a way of communicating with the universe. There was a scientist named Carl Sagan, and he once said that he felt human beings were the eyes with which the universe sees itself. And that's how I view chanting, especially these days. So I enjoyed it, and it's very meditative and it's very calming. And it does, I believe, create a degree of synchronicity. In other words, your environment starts to provide you with events or things or situations or even people that enhance your life. So I call that synchronicity. In the old days, they used to call that benefit. You'll get a benefit, but it's not really a benefit. It's an evolving
So
synchronicity with your life.
you traveled all over the world with the organization.
Well, I traveled to a lot of American locations, yeah, and I spent a few years in Japan.
That's a lot of moving for a person.
Well, especially because, yeah, I was pretty young. I was only 19 or 20. And I had these friends in Washington, D.C. I even had a girl who was my girlfriend, which was the first one I'd had. That was actually the woman I first got together with. But I had to leave her for a year and a half. And then the organization moved me back to Los Angeles, which was a place that I hated, that I had to live for 2 years then. And then when they employed me in 1974, they moved me out there permanently until 1979, when I was sent to Japan again for 2 years. And she went with me there. But during this whole period of time, because I'd spent a lot of time in Japan and I was really studying a lot of Buddhism, I began to realize that what I was learning was not only about Buddhism, but about Japanese culture, and the two kind of fused together in this organization. So by 1980, I realized that the organization was kind of a cult, and it was really focused on the president of the organization rather than on the Buddha. In other words, they would not talk about the Buddha, Shakyamuni, or Nichiren, who was the person who founded this sect of Buddhism, but rather they would focus on this man who was the president of the organization, and everything was done on his behest.
Yeah.
So more and more I realized that I was in a kind of a cult situation, and that's when I left.
I think I can feel it.
That would have been after about 15 years.
I think I can feel it because it was your job, it was your family, it was your friends, it was your religion. It was all wrapped up into one.
Right.
And that would be cult-like, not to have anything separate from that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It kind of removes you from your family. It removes you from your previous life, which had not been that great for me. But it all becomes focused on the organization. And that's why when I look at MAGA today, that to me is a cult, because it's formulated on the basis of the one man heading the thing, as opposed to democracy or the promise of the United States.
Right.
So
I was.
So I've been able to help a lot of people in my work as a therapist who've also left cults,
So what was it? What was the big burning issue for you to leave it? Because there had to be something like that. There had to be a reason for you to just go, okay, I've had about enough of this.
Well, it's because I divorced Donna, my first wife, and got together with Julie, who was my second wife, with whom I had my children, my two boys. And in Japan, that's really frowned upon back then. Back then, divorce was really a stigma, and so that stopped my upward movement in the organization.
Could you have stayed stuck?
What?
Could you have stayed stuck in a certain situation with that organization?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because a couple of the top leaders in the organization were convinced that my divorce was a real slander with regard to Buddhism, and it wasn't.
No.
And so they made very sure, because of politics in any organization, so they made sure that my upward movement was stopped. And actually, I was demoted from a couple of positions. And the main thing I had to offer back in those days, I'm talking about the late 70s and early 80s, was the main thing I had to offer was a fair amount of knowledge about Buddhism in general.
Right.
And even the Japanese culture and things like that. And but that movement stopped, and there were people actively trying to suppress my advancement within the organization. So that's why, even though in 1980 I realized, and that's when I left my wife and got together with my new wife. But it only took 3 years before I actually quit the organization altogether and left Los Angeles,
Okay.
which had been a dream for me anyway because I really hated Los Angeles.
So now, 40 something or 50 years later, what do you think of Buddhism and the Nichiren
Oh,
chanting and
well,
what
chanting.
what are the things that have changed
With
or
regard to
evolved?
the religion, nothing has changed. I still chant every day. I still do my prayers to the Lotus Sutra every day. So nothing has changed from the standpoint of my religious practice. But everything else has changed because when you leave a cult, you become completely disenfranchised, and you
Yeah.
become the subject of rumor, and you become what's the word I'm looking for? Ostracized. So that
And you
even,
still feel that today.
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So if you had anything to say about your 19-year-old self, what would you tell your younger self?
I would tell my younger self that I think that Buddhism is a really important teaching, and that Nichiren's explanation of Buddhism and his mandate to do the chanting and to do the meditation is really important, and to do that. But basically, there's a really great statement which says trust the law and not the person, and that's what I would tell people. Trust the law, don't trust the person, whether it's the president of an organization or the president of the United States or anybody who poses as this,
Know it all.
fearless and correct leader. I would say trust the law, trust what you feel in your gut, and trust what you feel like you have to do for yourself to evolve yourself and to approach other people without judgment, because there's a lot of judgment in an organization. There's a lot of politics. There's a lot of,
Division now.
yeah, division, or
There wasn't this much division 10 years ago. I mean, there was
well, not in
opposites, but
this country.
no, but now they're very decisive.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's one of the problems I'm having, because even though I think the internet is a very positive thing in the way that we can all communicate, and we communicate with each other in different countries and different languages and all of those things. But I believe that it's become the main source of
issue.
social interaction. And I think that's a really negative thing, because
Yeah.
I think there's nothing more important than sitting and talking with somebody and really getting to know them instead of communicating in cyberspace.
Yeah.
And that's what I really hate about the internet and social media in general. And the only social media I have, which I never even use or post on anymore, is Facebook. I will not do Instagram. I will not do TikTok. I will not do any of those things.
Well, it's a good thing you had me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing that I have a few individuals that I can talk with. But,
Okay,
that's
so is
that's
there
just me.
anything?
And like I said, I think it's kind of like people must have felt when they were used to riding horses and all of a sudden cars came along,
Yeah.
or they were used to listening to the radio and all of a sudden television came along.
Yeah.
And we were used to television and radio, and then the internet came along.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that's all been completely positive. If nothing else, this should
I
have all
think
led
that
to our understanding that it's really kind of stupid to have different nations. Buckminster Fuller called it the spaceship Earth, and that's what we all live on, the spaceship Earth. Why are there countries? Not that there shouldn't be different cultures, not that there shouldn't be different music or different performances or things like that, but we are all human beings. And I think this insistence on especially ownership of land, which we took over the land and we made it our property.
how old were you when you realized that humanity was a very important issue for you?
During my hippie years in New York,
Yeah.
when the Vietnam War was going on, and I recognized how useless it was, and I recognized that people I loved and knew were dying for no good reason. So when I became a pacifist, when I became a hippie, or whatever you want to call me, that's when I realized it was all about human beings. And we're pretty much the only species that turns on itself on a regular basis. Most other species do not. They may have their little territories, like, wolves or bears or whatever, but I mean, I don't know that much about it, but I'm just saying species normally don't turn on themselves and kill each other and hurt each other to the extent that human beings do.
Are you still waiting for alien ships to come in and save us?
No, I'm not waiting for it. I would like it, because I think human beings have really gone in the wrong direction. And I credit the book Ishmael for teaching me that.
Okay.
Because Ishmael said that we as a species are the only species that's concerned with growing and expanding. And he said that's why we've kind of destroyed our planet. And so the bottom line of Ishmael is we should be leavers instead of takers. Instead of taking from the earth and taking from other people, we should leave every situation better than we found it.
Amen.
Yeah.
So if you had something to say to the younger generation today and this morning, what would it be? Oh my goodness.
It would be, I would apologize for how members of my generation, the boomers, and members of other generations, especially Generation X in the 1980s, we fucked up the planet and we fucked up society. And there's a better way to go about things, but it's about approaching each other with kindness and love and gentleness, and a determination to resolve our problems through communication instead of violence.
Is there anything in the Nichiren Buddhism that would state that?
Well, yeah, again, in Nichiren Buddhism, Shakyamuni really didn't write anything. All of his teachings were listened to from his lectures and then written 100 years later.
Right.
But Nichiren very specifically, especially in a writing called On the Pacification of the Land Through the Establishment of Buddhism, Nichiren basically said it's really not about power and money. The same things people are saying now, that we needed to come from our own human sense of enlightenment, and most importantly, respecting every other human being, even those we disagree with, as potential Buddhas. What? Oh. So yeah, Nichiren talks about it in that particular writing on the pacification of the land through the establishment of Buddhism.
Okay, I like Tahoe. I like Tahoe.
Well, Tahoe was a mythical Buddha.
Yeah, but I like it.
Well, yeah, because it's the Buddha who basically verifies that what you're doing is right.
Right.
Well,
I hope you have a good day, and we'll do this again. But I really like to do the videotaping because you have so much to say and so much wisdom to share. So thank you for sitting here again and letting me do this.
Okay, well, you're welcome.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I swore too much.
Yeah, YouTube will be sorry.
Will they bleep me?